To introduce myself, my name is Laurice Tate-Spandman. I am the editor and publisher of Johannesburg in Your Pocket City Guide. And this is our 6th webinar. And we plan to continue the series and keep asking questions about tourism as we expand our coverage beyond Joburg. So Joburg has always been our base, but we'll soon be launching a Gauteng in Your Pocket online and also a Cape Town in Your Pocket. That our plans were sort of delayed by COVID, as everybody's got a COVID story. That's part of ours. But the more we cover tourism and the more we cover Joburg, the more we realize that the story of Joburg is also tied to so many different places in the country. And people come from so many of those different places and bring their stories to this city. So it would kind of be neglectful if we didn't trace some of that back. A little bit about us. We're a print and digital guide to the city. We hope you've signed up for our weekly newsletter, so you make sure that you're up to date each week with what's happening. And I hope you're also following us on social media. You can also find our more sort of industry-related take on the world if you just follow us on our LinkedIn page at In Your Pocket City Guides, South Africa. We're part of an international brand which started in Eastern Europe more than 25 years ago. And part of my motivation for pursuing the brand was that it reminded me a lot of where we are in Joburg. I visited Moscow in 2010 and found a Moscow in Your Pocket. And my sense then was that Joburg was very much like Moscow, and South Africa was. Our tourism was not very developed. 2010 was really a turning point. And it was if all of a sudden a curtain had dropped and now we had to be a tourist-friendly country with very little experience of how to do that. So that's always interested me in how we develop this tourism story. And when we launched in Joburg, we already knew we weren't choosing the world's easiest city to promote. In fact, the fact that Joburg's our baseline means we're not afraid to take on any city and make people want to explore it. We connect widely across the city and the country. And we're firm believers also, and especially during this time where there's been so much evidence of it, that strengthening domestic tourism and local tourism is really a key to successful tourism in South Africa. It's really not an aspect that can be left out of the picture. And I also believe that one of our greatest strengths is building local ambassadors who believe in the destination. I think also, you know, we sometimes kind of showcase the pretty destinations and the pretty attractions, and that's the easy part of tourism. But so much of South Africa's assets are actually the people and the people you encounter along the way of that journey. And to do that, you need to be a little bit adventurous in your travels. So I think that's also something to sort of keep in mind, that a lot of our tourism potential is locked in people's stories, and there are a lot of remarkable stories. Can I ask that if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We'd love you to introduce yourselves in the chat. Tell us where you're from and why you're here today. Just checking, I think we might, oh no, everybody's still here. And I think we're going to kick off, although we've just lost Sisa on video. So I'm just going to wait to see if we can get him back. There you go. Great. I'm actually going to start off with Sisa. We've got a fantastic panel today, and I'll introduce each person in turn. We have got Sisa Ntshona is joining us for a second time, and he is CEO of SA Tourism. And I thank you for indulging us and all our questions about tourism. So thank you for being here. We have Lebo Malepa, who is the founder of Lebo Soweto Backpackers and a true tourism pioneer in every way. Then we've got Mmasechaba Nonyane, co-founder of Native Rebels, which is just about one of the coolest spots you can visit in Soweto. And we actually had lunch there, sure, but probably like 2 days before lockdown started. So that was our last great experience in Soweto. We have Raymond Rampolokeng, who is struggling with his video, but I can attest that he is good looking and he is here. And he is Soweto's first birding guide and has done incredible work in terms of conservation in Soweto and in South Africa in general. And then we have the firecracker, Nomsa Mazwai, who is GM of Soweto Theatre, but is also a social activist and has founded a new movement called Funk It, I'm Walking, and she will be telling us more about that. So we're going to start off, and I think we're going to start with Sisa, because as I said when he joined, I think he's used to being in the hot seat. And tourism authorities roll out campaigns on township. Once a year, somebody says, we're going to promote township tourism, and rolls it out somewhere under a banner. And I'm very interested to understand, what does that term mean, and what is it meant to convey in terms of tourism?
Yeah, hello everybody, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. Always a pleasure to be on board and having these conversations. Yeah, look, I think what has happened is obviously COVID has pressed the reset button, and we all have to look differently as to how we reconstruct back our tourism activities. At its core, tourism is about telling the stories of its people, of its flavors, of its colors and food and everything else there. Without the people, they just become objects that you can just take pictures of, and there's no point in traveling, otherwise you can just look at a screen. Now, the people aspect of it really bring it to life. Now, in order to understand how we go about this, you've got to understand the context of South Africa. You're absolutely right. South Africa has always been a mining town, right? Our claim to fame has been gold, diamonds, and iron ore, and even manufacturing to some extent. But really now it's about how then do we start to move the economy and diversify its revenue stream. Mining, the stuff is running out of the ground. Manufacturing, we know the pressures that are there. So tourism then becomes that center space that we want to drive, from the perspective there. Now, one of the key aspects of South Africa is all about, as we come out of COVID, as things slowly start to become normal, we want to drive inclusivity at the center of it, right? And by that, I mean, think of it this way. Imagine you are a shop owner and you only have 5 products, right? At some point in time, you'll run out of products to sell because people have bought all 5. Now, inclusivity in our view means moving that 5 products to 50 products, so that even if someone comes for the 10th time, 20th time, there's something new to offer. And that's essentially what we want to do around as we come out of tourism. There is what you call the famous Golden Triangle, which is Cape Town, bit of Garden Route, and probably Kruger, which is really how we've been shaping ourselves to the world, especially. Now is the time to say we want to shine the spotlight on all of the various elements of this country. We want to shine the spotlight on the rural side, on the urban side, on the townships right across the board, essentially from their perspective. Because at times we may underestimate our own stories, but the world wants to hear them, right? And also as well, we are very clear that the recovery of the sector is going to be led inside out, starting off with domestic tourism. And we've seen that come up quite significantly. We want to make sure that we maintain that momentum, then regional as in the Africa play, then ultimately international. So the label of whether it's township or this is really irrelevant in my view, but it's essentially making sure that all of South Africa participates and is included within the tourism activity. That includes its people, its stories, as I said earlier on, and diversity that we have, that we have as a country to showcase to the world. Every time, when we do these surveys, when we ask tourists, international tourists especially, what's the one thing that they really take away about South Africa? They'll tell us it's not our great weather, it's not the great animals, it's not the great features and everything else. It is its people, right? And there lies in the magic, in terms of how do we bring more of ourselves into the tourism space. And again, sitting around here today with these active participants, leaders within the tourism sector, it really makes my job slightly easier because they're the ones who actually get to execute and get the engagement levels going.
Right. I think you sort of ducked the township tourism definition, but we'll come back to that. I'm going to move on to Lebo. And the reason I wanted Lebo to speak first was also because Lebo is really, and I called him a pioneer earlier, he's really the one who sort of reframed that tourism narrative about Soweto. And I think he did that by, I want him to tell his own story, but by looking at a whole lot of tourist buses going past him, and he had a thought about why is that happening in Soweto. So Lebo, if you can take it from there and tell us how you changed.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody again. And yeah, I came into tourism by mistake, by being, complaining that maybe, the tour operators were not giving us a fair share of, tourists, or maybe the tourists were not, free to explore and, mingle with us on the ground. And we were just expected to wave hands on the buses as they pass. And also there was a lot of fear because we saw a lot of tourists not getting out of the buses. They'll just go to, at the time, Wandi's place. That's the only time they got off the bus. After that, they go back to the bus and they're back to the city, and then they've seen Soweto and they can tell people about Soweto. But I thought that was wrong, and especially on the fact that, we were student activists. My parents were part of the students of 1976. And I thought, I know a lot of people here who have stories to tell, your mamas, your kulus, and they need to be brought forward to relate their story. And I think that's what tourists wanted to see and expected to experience when they get here. So I became the first volunteer to say I can assist in that, rather than complain.
I like the point about how complaining leads to creating a better tourism environment. I totally agree with you. This is so much about kind of initiative and potential. And from there, I want to move to Nomsa, who has launched a sort of new movement around walking in Soweto called Funkadam Walking. And if you can tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment with that.
So Funkadam Walking aims to make it safe for a woman to walk at any time of day in any condition. And I started Funkadam Walking in Soweto because I'm the general manager of Soweto Theatre. And one thing that I picked up was that, we've got this dense population, the flats that are right there by the theatre, and yet we're still struggling with audiences. And it really went back to the fact that people can't walk in Soweto. And so Funkadam Walking is, what I do is I identify a route. So for this year, I've identified from Soweto Theatre to Thesis Lifestyle. And every month we have a walk, 5 kilometers along that route. So over the year, we're gonna have 12 walks. And the aim is to have a walking festival on that route at the end of the year, after having interacted with all the different communities along that walkway. So our first walk was from Nhlanzane Station, which is right down the road from Soweto Theatre to Native Rebels. And so we walked and walked back, and we supported that restaurant. Funkadam Walking is also a socioeconomic development vehicle. And I say this because through walking, if more people could walk, and if it was safer to walk, safety actually has a value to it. A better quality of life improves property prices. And the fact that people were walking, when people get into their cars, a local rand turns into a Joburg rand. And so I'm trying to show my community that if we could encourage people not to get into their cars, a walking rand is a local rand, and we can actually boost economic activity in our areas, start going to our own restaurants, supporting stores around Soweto. So my next walk is Thesis Lifestyle, and we're walking around, we're going past A2 Lifestyle, and we're going past what used to be Mshenguville, but is now a really beautiful park, and then on Elias Motsoaledi, and then back to Thesis Lifestyle. And I'm not sure how much we boosted Native Rebels with last time, but with 40 walkers, everybody had dinner, wine. It's just a great cash injection for that moment. The walks are free. I don't charge for the walks, but I encourage everybody to register. And then everybody who registers, we encourage them to actually spend money on the walking route. And we just make it safe. I work with CPF and the police. So I have local CPF that are on the route, and the police are doing visible policing. So it makes that walking route for that window, that 6 hours, completely safe. You can walk with your family, and that's what I'm doing. So that's Funk and I'm Walking. People should visit the website and register for the next walk, which is on the 5th of November. Yes, Funk and I'm Walking. Let's walk to freedom.
Cool. Thank you for that. We're going to switch to Raymond. And Raymond Rampolokeng, I've known for a number of years since he took me for a walk up Tonga Kopi and showed me a completely different side of Soweto, very unexpected. And he's been instrumental in looking at conservation efforts and trying to bring that into Soweto. And it also struck me that so much of what the new wave of tourism is about that responsible tourism, is about a connection with a local environment, is about a kind of care for the planet and for nature in a way that we've never really considered it. So Raymond, I'd love you to come in here and tell us a bit about the work that you do and some of the challenges you face.
Thank you very much, Laris. Good afternoon to everybody from Soweto. Unfortunately, you can't see me, but Laris, thank you very much for the great introduction. How I got to be involved in conservation and being born in Soweto and still living in Soweto was the frustration that I had from corporate. So I had to channel my energies to the township that I was born in. And I volunteered at a conservation organization in the year 2000 called the Soweto Mountain of Hope, which was aiming to convert a troublesome, disused water reservoir in Shiawelo into an environmental center. And we championed that. To our surprise, we got an opportunity to host the Children's Summit, which was the science of the World the World Conference on Sustainable Development, and we hosted almost 200 kids from every part of the world. And from that, I guess that's where the bedding bug caught me. We had a program that was a walkabout to the wetlands, and I never looked back. We met people from BirdLife South Africa who invited us to various outings in the far parts of Johannesburg. And from there, I guess I was the stubborn one who wanted to take it further. And I worked for BirdLife South Africa for a few years, learning about the intricacies and the complexities of conservation and how I can take it back to my community and make it fashionable and make it sexy, so that young people could start now looking at conservation as an attractive career choice and also a hobby, which we certainly achieved. And in anticipation to us hosting the World Cup in 2010, we started the bird watching tours in Soweto. Unfortunately, it was winter. We couldn't identify any birds at the time. However, the summer of 2010, we saw the push and the pull of the local people and the bird clubs, which were very vital to supporting our efforts of linking the conservation activities that were taking place with the recreational activities which are happening at the identified sites. The Orlando Dam, which is where we are operating from because of the availability of the water resource, and it has been transformed into a tourist attraction site. Inoksontonga Hills, which is just opposite the Orlando Dam, we're providing hiking tours, and There's bedding taking place everywhere. There's a beautiful bed that you can only find there, which is the Nidiki, very special to see when we're getting there. And we know that's a spiritual site that you are able to go up the copy and pray. And we are also promoting our well-manicured parks, Togoza Park and also Moroka Dam. And in 2017, we're part of a group of 25 hikers who were raising awareness on the importance of saving our birds, our animal species with the SPCA. And we summited Mount Kilimanjaro. So these are efforts to also encourage young people to see how sexy, how these can be turned into hobbies, but most importantly, they can be turned into businesses that are able to provide employment and also to promote South Africa and Soweto as a bedding destination. That's what we are aiming.
Thanks, Raymond. We're going to move from there. But I think there's a lot of points to come back to in what you've mentioned, because also the idea of this link between tourism and economic development is a key link to explore. And it's something that I want to chat to Mmasechaba about, who does run a small business in Soweto that in some ways is a local business, but in other ways has enormous tourism potential because of its because of what it represents in terms of local Sowetan culture, from food to music, and also the idea of this bohemian sort of hangout in Soweto. And I wanted to I wanted to start with, you spoke about that you started your business with a vision to remap the township narrative.
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Loris, for having me. Thank you so much to the other panelists. And also, I want to thank also the Department of Tourism, firstly, just for, helping us through during the COVID-19. Native Rebels is a beneficiary of the fund. Thank you so much for that. And also Soweto Theatre for continuing to support us on this journey. So for those that don't know me, my name is Mmasechaba and I'm 32 years old currently. And I'm the current co-owner of Native Rebels with my amazing partner over here, Lebo. And so basically my story is I'm originally from Middleland, Soweto. And so I'm what you would regard as a born free, or what they would, call a born free, where in 1994, I was in grade 6. In grade 1, I started school, and I started school at Roseneath Primary School. And I think my first tourist experience was actually going to white suburbia, right? And I lived in a huge contrast world where 5 days of the week for 6 hours, I'm on the other side of town. And then I'd have to commute back into Soweto, which looked very different to what it is right now. But nonetheless, I come from a family, I was raised by my parents, my mom and my dad, and I had siblings all around and cousins growing up. But the Soweto started to really shape who I am. And back to what your panels have been saying, that it's also about the people. And me being a Sowetan played such a huge role in what I do today. But some information that I think is important that will kind of tell you the story as to why we are here. I worked then for 9 years in corporate company, working for a big organization, and I did well in my career. I spoke the right type of English. I was afforded a good opportunity. I was able to get myself moving up the ranks. With that, I was able then to come in and join Native Rebels with Lebo, who had already started the business by that time. It had been running for a year. So when I saw Native Rebels and the vision that he had created, or the vision that he wanted, it was very much aligned with what I wanted. We didn't start Native Rebels from a tourism aspect of things. For us, it was more creating something for us that represented us. formerly growing tired of having to visit another side of town and live, and then come back to Soweto to kind of sleep. So it was, for me, it never made sense. I was also very fortunate enough I'm going to run quickly, like through my intro quickly. I was also very fortunate to travel. Not a lot of people get the opportunity. I was able to travel Europe, South America, and intensely South Africa. So from that perspective, I was able to learn about tourism as a tourist. But what I always saw very important when I was traveling is authenticity of places and authenticity of people, and also very representative of what's currently happening. I do believe right now Soweto is not really properly represented, because right now it's being represented from an outside and not from an inside outside, as you know, Sona said. So I'm very much in agreement with most of the panel, or the panel, that what we've spoken about. I'm very passionate about Soweto. I'm passionate about, you know, Black children growing up in a community where they can find inspiration in things that are happening around them. They can have reference of, there's another business that started off in Soweto and it's growing, like Lebo's Backpacker, like Native Rebel, like Theses, like all these businesses that are busy mushrooming up for us, you know? So that's basically who I am. And I mean, Native Rebels has been growing leaps and bounds for over the past year. We've really tripled in terms of feet that are coming in. We are attracting more tourists, local domestic tourism as well. So it's been a really great success, and there's a lot of opportunity that lies in Soweto tourism, that's for sure.
How do we create, what I'm interested in is how do, you know, so many people will come and visit this country, and we will also get to that domestic audience, but people will come and visit to this country with the idea of they have to visit Soweto. They'll go to Soweto once, have one experience, and they'll decide they've seen a place that is actually qualifies as the 4th biggest city in the country from the numbers I looked at yesterday. How do we expand the sort of routes and opportunities so that one visit to Soweto doesn't mean you've seen it all? Maybe we'll start with Sisa on that. I don't know if you want to take that on.
Yeah, pick on the guy with the blazer. Okay, that's fine. No, absolutely. So the context becomes important, you know, that, you know, Soweto is a proxy for so many townships around the country of what is possible. And part of the desire is for each kind of province, each town to have its own Vilakazi street equivalent or some form of tourism activity. Because at the heart of it, Laurie, is that tourism is about trade. That's the bottom line. It's about trade. It's about getting people in who come and they spend money and this get the economy going, people get employed, et cetera, that you don't need to leave the area of where you reside, but rather can make something out of it. The second part is I'm loving what I hear from the panel is that a lot of the people actually got to here by accident. No one really designed to say, listen, I'm going to wake up, I want to become in the tourism industry. It really came from curiosity, it really came from observation and seeing the gap. And that's the important part, that you don't need permission. There is no tender to fill in here. There is no, do you get what I'm saying? You spot the gap and you take it, And ultimately, at the end of the day, the consumer decides. If you've got a great product and you've got a great offering and you've got a great experience, people will come over and over again. I saw one of the questions here, we're asking about what's SA Tourism going to do with promoting LTOs, local tourism organizations, etc. The key thing here that we are really focusing on is providing market access platforms. SA Tourism has a great, in this instance, a lot of eyes on our websites, on our platforms, etc. And we want to create that dance floor and invite many businesses to be on the dance floor. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as I said, the consumer decides, but essentially is to make you visible and make sure that you're able to put your foot in front and actually get a lot of that activity happening there. And again, I think the part of the view and the picture is to have as many township activities happening right across the country, so that me coming from one part of the country can travel to another part of the country and get to know the other spaces as well. And I think that's where we are slowly evolving to. It can go faster, but I think that's where, the COVID gift, if I can call it, to discover ourselves, to discover our country, discover our experiences, and at the heart of it has authenticity and immersion.
I've got something a little bit contentious, I don't know. But I'm going to give it to the chief gap spotter on the panel, which I'm going to say is Lebo, who spotted the earliest gap. And I'm going to say, do you think it's a good strategy to have a Vilakazi Street as a key tourism point, and has it enabled tourism beyond the street?
Yeah, actually, I was also one of the first people that, ignited Vilakazi in terms of, market the whole busyness that we are seeing there, and assisted many restaurants to set up and let them, come into the tourism space. But what I'm hearing now, a lot from the tourists, they don't like to see that because splashy cars, people acting like, Soweto is rich, people can afford. But on the other side, you're seeing shacks, you're seeing small houses, and we're telling people about, the unemployment rate and the poverty line and all that. And it's good for economy, for economical, inclusivity, and just to make sure that, we can offer different things. Let's have our Long Street, Melville, whatever. But I don't really think that that's what tourists are looking for from what we hear from tourists. They'll rather say, actually, it's good to be at your spot because it's out of the busyness. It gives the real Soweto feeling. But at the same time, I wish that we could have a Vilakazi that is not made up of what is Melville is, that is made up of what Soweto is, not necessarily bars and restaurants, but maybe a lot of diversity of different things. I look at guys who are selling in the streets there that today they still don't have a shelter. Today we're talking about level 1. People are still not back in selling, trading in Vilakazi Street. And we're talking about your museums that are closed, all of them in Vilakazi Street. So clearly it says that we need something bigger than Vilakazi Street. And Vilakazi Street is just maybe an example to show that what we can do and what the potential is there. But we need a lot of diversity and maybe run away from just promoting alcohol. That's what we are seeing in Vilakazi there, and glam and glamour that we don't subscribe to, all of us.
Nomsa, do you want to come in there? Because I'm also thinking, like, how does that route expand to Soweto Theatre? Does that traffic ever find its way to you and to what you're offering? Oh, I think you're muted.
So this is how I approach Soweto. Soweto is a city. Soweto is a city with a lot of monuments and a lot of history. Soweto is a neighborhood. Soweto has a story. And it's not one story. It's not the story. It's not only Vilakazi Street. There's more to the story of Soweto. And what I think is important for myself and for Funkera Walking and for the Soweto Theatre in moving forward is to create experiences for people that keep them in Soweto. So at the theatre, a few years back or 2 years back, we started working with people that were doing 72 hours in Soweto and starting to reach out to the bed and breakfasts. I mean, we've got a database of all the bed and breakfasts in and around Soweto because we're not only wanting to sell tickets, we want to sell the whole weekend. Spend the weekend with us. Spend a few days in Soweto. And that speaks to a lot to my programming as well. When I'm talking about people from outside Soweto, there's different kinds of packages that we put together. But when I'm looking at marketing to people from outside Soweto, I'm always thinking about how am I keeping them in Soweto? How are they spending time in Soweto, sleeping over, waking up, having an experience? Because Soweto, in terms of traveling here, if you're from Joburg, it is quite a way away. Soweto Theatre is not in Soweto Light. There's Soweto Light and then there's Deep Soweto. I'm in Deep Soweto. So when I bring people, they're expecting to just hop off the highway. And I'm like, no, you hop off the highway and then you drive some more. So that's become very important in creating experiences. Another thing that I think is very important is the public service delivering. Public servants going to work and doing work. The challenges and the impediments to tourism in Soweto are things like the police going to police stations but not doing police work. The Department of the Joburg Roads the people go to their offices and sit behind desks, they sign tenders, but nobody's monitoring and making sure that the roads are being taken care of, the potholes are being filled. So my big thing is I really would love to see the public service, people going to work. I think that's the one thing. And then us in the tourism space, really, we are innovative. We understand the tourist. We understand that product, the Vilakazi Street product. And there's many tourists that have had that product and now they're looking for something else. And that something else is arrive at Lebo's Backpackers, have a great time chilling, have a few beers, come through to the theater, watch an amazing show. After the show, go to Native Rebels, go and have a drink, go and listen to some, there's Sawona music jams, there's open mic sessions, there's Mohodu Mondays. I mean, Soweto, unlike Joburg, it's jam-packed. Every single day there's something happening in Soweto. So it's about us being able to sell the experience, but we can't sell the experience when the tourists are driving in and I mean, they have a flat tire and then the police are just the people that are robbing them.
It's just small challenges we have to deal with. Okay, that's quite tricky. I want to come to Raymond. Also, this question of, it almost seems, do you have to be a social activist in order to be in tourism? Because it almost seems like that is, nothing comes without a fight. Raymond, I don't know if you want to take that?
Most definitely, Loris, without a doubt. To be in Soweto, it's second nature to be a social activist, because the minute you're stepping out of your yard, you're faced with multiple opportunities to educate, to transform, and this is where the business opportunities come in. The problem is a potential business opportunity. However, with a government, that could make things much more easier. For instance, in our tours, we have identified opportunities of environmental education in schools, within the public itself. When we are into wetlands, we are now faced with the challenge that we have been running away from, which is indigenous knowledge systems. When people are being baptized in wetland opportunities, it's an opportunity to educate ourselves. However, it's an eyesore when we get there because of the amount of litter of the sewage that is flowing onto our river systems. An eyesore. So with the support of the local government, that could really make a tourism much more attractive. Cleaning campaigns that an opportunity for us to get involved in. By nature, Sowetans are people who love cleanliness. So the opportunities of creating more parks, utilizing public open spaces and making them more safer, that's an opportunity to have Sowetans themselves embracing the public open spaces. Togoza Park is filled to the brim. Outside of the COVID, you have up to 7,000 people utilizing the park itself. Moroka Dam. We need to be able to dance around with the local government and also the tourism promotion companies that are enabling us to be able to have much more greater market, and we've seen that happening. Start with the young people so that when they are older, they become much more socially responsible individuals. Whether they come from Soweto, that can be replicated to other townships. And that's the beauty about it, replicating it to other townships that are not yet there.
Great, thank you for that. I wanted to come back to something Mmasechaba said about growing up and about sort of there's visible and invisible boundaries that you cross, you know, as you travel from Soweto into Johannesburg. And I mean, I've had it, it's almost like you sort of treat it as a tourist. I've been treated as a tourist in the inner city a number of times, that I'll be walking and someone will run up to me and say, "Welcome to South Africa." They're so excited to see me. Where are you from? And it's a bit embarrassing because I live about 10 minutes from the inner city. But I wanted to, Mmasechaba, that idea of like visible and invisible boundaries and crossing those. Are enough people, do you think, like, what would it take to make people feel comfortable about driving from one side to the other and coming to Native Rebels without thinking you have to be a tourist to do that? Oops, I think we might have just lost camera. Let me try and get it back. Okay, while we're waiting for Mmasechaba to come back, there's a few questions. I think we'll just take a question from Aidan Lawrence, which is actually directed, I think, at Lebo. And he was asking about how is Soweto implementing protocols and how well does this work on bicycle tours, for example, with masks and using COVID protocols?
Yeah, I think from our side, we are having a great time because we're not really inventing anything new. We've always, dominated the outdoor space. Social distancing has always been there. And just now is just to add in to make sure that, we can sanitize, we can fog the bicycle, whatever that is, we can use to make sure that people are safe. Masks, face shields are there. But also maybe a little bit of a big challenge now is that we normally, go and give high fives. And now we don't allow our guests to give high fives. Now it's the elbow, quiff, whatever we call it. And but it hasn't really given us a challenge. We haven't really seen, we use tuk-tuks as well, which still gives that open space for people to be able to, jump in, jump out, and not being closed in a bus or in a vehicle. So we've been doing very well in that space, and our park, people are out. Our restaurant is outside, and we've just cut off a little bit on our dormitories that we've lessened the numbers of beds. But I think more than anything, we have a lot of outdoor space to play around in. We have a lot of sitting areas to utilize. And a lot of our stuff is happening outside, so we have an advantage of the good weather also.
Okay, great. We're going to go back to Mmasechaba. She's back on camera. Just to that question of like, how do we get past those boundaries? What would be your solution?
Solution, I might not give you. I might not be able to give you a solution. But however, what we're seeking to do is to make people more aware of how we are living and how people are living within Soweto. Okay, so where do I begin with this? Our problems in Soweto are like, and I said yesterday that there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of layers of problems, right? We have a youth that is unemployed. We have young entrepreneurs, people that are not.
What have we lost? I think we've lost sound. Can everybody hear? The sound. Can everybody hear Mmasechaba or?
No. No.
Okay, we've lost sound.
Just counting all the problems, and she forgot bandwidth.
Which is a major issue, actually. You would hope that at this stage of our COVID intense digital lives, we'd actually be able to do this seamlessly, but it never happens. I also want to, there was a question also, Nomsa, about the safety of walks and whether and how you sort of manage that at the moment in terms of encouraging people to join a group. How are you managing sort of COVID protocols?
So under level 3, we were doing only 50 people for the walks. And when you arrived at the walk, we gave you sanitizer. We had face buffs for everybody. So really nice face masks from one of our partners. And we were walking outside and then working with native rebels. We just made sure that they also observed COVID protocols when we went into native rebels. So it's really about compliance. COVID is real. It's out there. But we need to continue with our lives. People need to make a livelihood. We need to find a way to live with COVID. And so that's been very key. But if I was just to add one more thing, the question you're asking Mmasechaba about how do we do away with this invisible barrier? The first thing for me is public transport. And so with Funkaram walking, we're always walking from a public transport hub. So it's either a Via bus station or a train station, but we're always going from a train station because the idea is I should be able to hop on a train in Langlaagte and get off at Mtlanzane station, go to a restaurant, get back on the train and go home, or get on a Rea Via in Kensington and get off go to the hub and change and get off in Soweto and go back. We really do need public transport to work, which is what I was talking about, the public sector, people going to work and doing their work. Because there's so much opportunity if we just go to work and do work. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, the other big barrier for Soweto, and it's a very negative trait in South Africa, is that when businesses dealing with Black people or Black communities, the service that they provide is substandard. I live in the Jablani flats. There are about 5,000 flats here. I don't know how many people, but it's a huge population. I don't have network. There's only one service provider where I can have mediocre network. I don't have good network. I'm the person that's keeping cell phone companies running because the cell phone companies are not making money from contract subscribers. They're making money from people buying airtime and people buying data, which is the population in Soweto. So I'm funding the big business. I am the market. But when it comes to service delivery in my area, suddenly they forget how to do their job properly. So it's not about only the government doing their job properly, but it's just about business coming, and we're not asking for more than what they're delivering. We're just asking for the same services. So, that's also a huge barrier because people are linked to their data. They're linked to their phones. They want to get to a place. They want to go online. They want to share. They want to stream. And you might not feel it when you are in Soweto, but psychologically, that irritation from not being able to connect effectively is going to demotivate you from going again because your subconscious mind will remind you, but remember, you couldn't go live there. So it's just about people doing the right thing, going to work to do work, not lowering their standards, but it's structural. In these big firms, the people that are responsible for the Soweto file don't even know Soweto. They don't even live here. They don't even have that experience. They don't have a sense of the texture of what they're dealing with. And that we're dealing with every day in South Africa. So it's a gradual thing, but it's really about a change in attitude about spaces and about people.
Mmasechaba, I see you back with us. Sorry, Nomsa. I see you back with us. Can you pick up on that? Oh, got to unmute.
I think maybe this is the one big problem. I mean, right now, You know, you can't even connect with people, you know, the infrastructure being so underdeveloped, and not enough is going into the township for us to be able to have where we can be able to play at a fair level with our counterparts. You see, because at the end of the day, the people that have to run the tourism in Soweto, it has to be Sowetans, it has to be the youth, and it has to be the Black youth more especially. So if you're having a situation where Black youth can't even access resources, how do we springboard from there? You know, but that was not my point. I think this just came out of my frustration of not being able to even connect, which is my daily struggle every single day, just getting proper connection. But anyway, but back to how my life basically and how I grew up shaped how I actually saw what I do and how it all comes together. Firstly, the issue of social cohesion and having living in a South Africa that is inclusive is something that might take a bit of time, right? So we gotta now put ourselves in the position of how do we work with what we have? And you start telling authentic stories and you start telling the world as to what you guys are doing or what we are doing or how we are living. Once you have, back to the good product, once you have a good product properly packaged, you are able to then sell yourself as a brand, because at the end of the day, the world is not going to feel sorry for you. We've been waiting for someone to feel sorry for us, but no one is going to feel sorry for you. So you got to pick up the tools yourself at some point. So the challenges of people and young Black South Africans are quite immense, and it's a lot to deal with. We don't have enough youth programs, and the conversation right now is about tourism. But when you think about it, there should be a lot of other industry and sectors that are part of this conversation, which is your small, medium enterprise departments, your policing, like Nomsa is talking about in terms of security. You cannot start a business when you're not safe. You're not going to start a business when people are not feeling safe. You know what I mean? And also SMMEs, and greatly the monopoly of big corporates within South Africa. That's also a huge problem, because you're restricting access for young South Africans. Not everyone comes from a trust fund background. We don't have trust fund. We literally have started the business with our own savings, with our own money. No injection from anybody, and it's tough. I won't lie, it's tough. But downstairs you have a Pick and Pay, which is a huge corporate company, but they're not investing in this business. They're not investing in the building. They're not supporting the guy, the vegetable guy down next to us, to be able to give them the supply and stuff. So Lebo talks about how many corporate companies are just coming into Soweto. Typical, you take and you leave, you know. And that has to stop at some point. It has to come to an end, because now Vilakazi Street has been sold to alcohol companies, you know, and very soon you're going to find Pick and Pays and ShopRite Checkers in that street. That it takes away the substance and the culture of its people. We are not alcohol people. We're not just drinkers. You don't just come to the township and just find drunkards. You know what I mean? So you gotta, for these kind of things to stop, it will be really nice if we had a really active government that would be able to come in and regulate businesses, regulate how fair competition within the township. Then when people are coming in, we're having Uber, Airbnb right now coming in, and they're using young tourists to sell their brand. Who's regulating all of that? Is the tourism department even aware that there's now I'm not saying they should not come in, but how do you protect the locals and still give them support to be able to run successful businesses? That's when we can start having tourism. That's when we can start having people coming in. But if the policing is not right, if the multinationals are not being regulated, if SMMEs are not supported, if young entrepreneurs are not supported, you're not going to have a tourism industry, unfortunately.
A very good point. But I think there's something else I want to raise from what you're saying, is that and you raised it about Vilakazi Street, is that my last visit there was in March, and I was quite shocked to see it's the neon lights of Tokyo, with one alcohol stand after another. I don't know if that's what people are looking for, you know, the little Tokyo of Johannesburg and Soweto. But what I suppose, you know, Soweto, so much of Soweto's tourism story has been shaped by monuments and commemorations and money spent on preserving its history. And there's been a lot less emphasis on developing the contemporary aspects, which all of these panelists represent. So they haven't had the same level of support as all the historical aspects. And yet at the same time, this new shift is almost, the history isn't being honored either at this point. The history's sort of slipping away. And how do we kind of build a tourism culture that honors heritage on the one hand, but doesn't say that's the only thing we have to sell as a tourism kind of asset? We've got both. We've got the contemporary life and we've got the history. And Raymond, I wanted to just ask you, because you mentioned in an earlier conversation, the dumping sites, and how I think even the Soweto 76 route has been over by dumping sites. It's like, how do we protect those resources?
The only thing that's going to be left when everybody is gone, it's the environment. So the tours that we are offering are merely aimed at conscientizing Sowetans and people who are visiting Soweto as tourists to start contributing into the preservation and the conservation of our biodiversity. So when our wetlands are gone, how are we going to promote bird watching? When we are cutting down trees in spring, what message are we sending to the younger generation? If we are not utilizing our parks for what they are meant for, what message are we sending to the younger generation? Hence, the campaign that we were involved in with South African tourism, the Welcome Back campaign, was a beautiful one that was saying Soweto is a bedding destination. And when we started, we were being laughed off to say, this is not going to take off. However, when we celebrated our first decade of promoting Soweto as a bedding destination and linking it with activities that are supporting other SMMEs, I'd be able to go to Lebo's and pick up one of his clients who wants to do bird watching in Soweto and complement his product, and to bird watching on bicycles, which is another a diversity to what Soweto has to offer, and getting involved in cleaning campaigns. What Lebo has achieved in developing food gardens and also linking it with his product experience is a beautiful example of how do we conserve our conservation, and how are we promoting what we have in achieving our Millennium Development Goals. I don't know if many people know that in Jabavu in Soweto, we have a wind monitoring station. That is one of the most important aspects of what we should be promoting in Soweto. We are growing up during the 80s where the Orlando Towers was emitting a whole lot of pollution in our atmosphere. That all of that has changed. We need to celebrate that. We need to promote that as we are providing our tourism experiences. We need to be also to complement what the local government is providing, their monthly cleaning campaigns. Make them fashionable, make them part of what young people want to get involved in, make them sexy, so that we are able to say, come to Soweto and participate in our economy.
How do we, I mean, it's so much about how do we engage locals, like right now without a kind of international tourists, keeping Soweto kind of alive. We've got an opportunity to look at it in quite a naked state and say, how do we encourage locals on every level to be engaging with Soweto as a destination? I wonder if everybody wants to take a crack at answering that. What are ways to get low? Because my sense is the more locals that promote Soweto as a destination, the better it'll be for international tourists, the better it'll be for local tourists. People have to believe in the destination to look after it. So yeah, Lebo, I don't know if you or actually Sisa, because you've been very quiet, and then we'll go to Lebo. What do you think the opportunities are for engaging locals?
I'm actually so enjoying listening, you know, because at times we like to speak a lot, but when you start to listen, basically, you get to have certain touch points and points of reference there. I think just hearing, listening everyone in the room, what has become very apparent and very obvious, that for tourism to occur, you need the entire ecosystem connected, right? Right from the infrastructure side, whether you're talking connectivity, whether you're talking basic things like services, picking up litter as an example, and you also need then to have the entrepreneurs who are able then to find and spot those gaps and disrupt, as it were, right? And then ultimately you need to have an enabler like a promotion agency such as ourselves that brings the attention to the specific areas. And I think when one of them is out of sync, it becomes a bit of a problem, right? And how it all fits together. Part of the challenge, I don't think tourism and the opportunities in tourism are understood equally by the different stakeholders across the board over there, right? I like to make the example is that when a miner walks into a room and says, hey, I'm a miner, people get up and clap hands and they want to bow down to you. If you walk into a room and say, I'm from tourism, they kind of turn away and walk away, essentially. So really shaping and repositioning tourism as a major economic contributor. We need the entire ecosystem to be connected. We need authenticity at the heart of it. And I cringe when I hear the level of commercialization that comes in. And I think that's a tough balance in the world that we live in, but authenticity, immersion are quite important. And you lose those, then you just create a commodity like any other place, essentially. And I think it's finding that mix that needs to come through. In the short term, we need to visit places. We need to visit each other, because with that pressure coming through, then you start to see some level of advancements coming through. But waiting for things to be correct and done sufficiently just won't happen. You just got to push the door.
Great. Lebo, do you want to pick up from there?
Yes. I mean, what we have been doing also when we understood that now is the chance for the domestic tourism to shine, was to create packages, different packages, and make sure that they are value for money, and make sure that we don't promote this accommodation for 2 hours, a day sleep and all that. Rather say, come for a weekend, come with friends. We'd rather give you a bigger package. We can bring the price, to a comfortable size or price. And then after the package, everything, package your Soweto Theatre, Native Rebels, and many other events that are happening in Soweto, and just make it, a whole weekend activity rather than just coming for a night or 2 hours and that's it. And then you're going back to wherever. But I think there's a lot of potential. People want to come out. They just want to know what can they do, because they don't know exactly what's there besides Vilakazi Street. And it's just up to us to make sure that, have you heard about bedding? Have you heard about this and that? And Soweto should be, I can put up a package. You pay a little bit in your accommodation, but they spend more on the experience that you might see in Soweto.
And Raymond, how are you seeing this kind of new shape of things in terms of attracting locals to what you're doing?
I think, Loris, we've started with Get Off the Bus a campaign sort of approach. We are now on to connecting we are now onto connecting the dots model of Soweto. How do we then live or bequeath a legacy to young people for us who've pioneered tourism in Soweto to say, let us also look at it in a global context of promoting our biodiversity while we are promoting recreational activities, and also not neglecting our indigenous knowledge system, which seems to be dying every day. So let us also make that to fashionable. So if you're going to native rebels, you know that you experience a very cool place. And when you go to Lebos, you know that you're going to have the skies looking at you at night. When you're visiting the Soweto Theatre, you're going to be eat the food of what Soweto has to provide. So we're inviting people, especially Sowetans, to start embracing what they are taking for granted, and in a symbiotic relationship with all the stakeholders that are involved. And if we can touch the sky, we can fly with the birds and make everything possible.
I like that your greatest teachers are the birds. Nomsa, do you want to come in there about engaging local?
So for me, Laurice, and my approach really in life and in business has always been about looking at the market and knowing who your target market is. So in our way, Funk and I'm Walking, my target market is walkers, people that love to walk. There's many of us out there in the world, and we're all over. And so I just create an amazing walking experience for people. And by that, I know that I'm attracting walkers, and walkers are my target market. And also with Raymond, he's targeting bird watchers. You know, there isn't this it's tourists are people who do things that they like. People wake up and do what they like to do. So it's about that product offering. For Native Rebels, I always know that there's a group of people that I can always speak to and tell them this is a really great place to go and have a great meal, and it's got an amazing vibe. And people will look for the vibe. If people are willing to get into a car and drive to Durban, July for a vibe, it's a vibe. There's nothing else that they're going for. So it's understanding that tourism is a lot about what are you selling? I'm selling a safe walk. Mmasechaba is selling a great meal and a great experience and a vibe. You know, Lebo is selling an experience for people that like, I mean, Lebo's selling a lot more. He's got bike riding, he's got backpacking, he's got, so it's you know, his market is people that go to backpackers, and there's a market of those people who travel the world and like staying at backpackers. And so it's just about really the infrastructure working, because we are here and we have our market, but our market has the same complaints, you know, the safety, the lower standard of quality of products in Soweto. You know, nobody wants to go somewhere and be treated badly or have a negative experience. It's not nice to go to every McDonald's in the world and taste the same McDonald's, but then when you come to Soweto, this McDonald's is different. And it's just about that psyche that we really have to get over. I don't understand that psyche where standard of delivery just drops once you cross the double-decker part of the M1.
Cool. I just want to check if Mmasechaba, we can't see you at the moment. I just wanted to see if you can see that you are around.
I thought it would be best if I switch off my video for the bandwidth. But however, based on what the panelists have said, for me, I want us to also have some sort of empathy for the community of Soweto. But I'm not saying feel sorry, but have understanding of how we are basically the first generation of entrepreneurs, or second generation. We don't come from a history of where we've got your uncles that you can actually cross-reference with that have had restaurants in their family for the last 3 years or 3 decades or centuries, you know. So things are going to take a bit of time. And equally, looking at the standard of education that our people and young South Africans are receiving, it's really substandard. It's really, really, really substandard. So if you're giving kids substandard education, when they grow up into the world, and they're not going to give you high grade standards either. So the psycheism is important, but also we have to also empathize and understand that things are not going to move as quickly as we would like them to move. The lack of resourcing obviously plays a huge part of why the change is slow, and also the inability of the state to be able to assist its people where need be. But here at Native, I mean, we continue and will continue to put Soweto on the map. We're hoping that more people will get inspired and aspire to also do what we are doing in whatever facets that they choose to go into, whether it's bird watching, whether it's cycling, it could be even the craziest. You can even think about skiing. If you want to ski in Soweto and you think it's possible, great. I am here to be your biggest champion. You see, but I mean, for us, where we want to play the biggest role is with the artists. Supporting our local artists. I mean, we're still doing our campaign of unmasking the artists, and soon we'll be having jazz legendary Madala Kunene. We also plan on having a lot more artists, local artists that are not actually on the commercial scene, but are also but are part of us, and they're telling South African stories. So if anyone is interested in a night out and looking for authentic experiences, we are totally your place. This Sunday we've got Madala Kunene. Please, Loris, Sisa as well. Lebo, I'm also inviting all of you guys. We're going to have documentary nights where we're going to be looking at lots of documentaries of local, of what the locals have been doing. We've got a huge history, guys. We've got the history of Kaiser Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, taxi owners, Kwaito musicians, Mendoza, Zola, Linda, Solomon Linda, the creator of Awumba. We've got so much stories. People must just come through. And once people come through, they'll realize that there's actually nothing unique about us. We are people, we live just like you, we have the same ambitions as everyone does. We're a nation that just wants to come together, and we've really created this subculture, which I call the Sowetan, lifestyle. Totally different to anything you'll find. It's not like anything in Limpopo, is nothing like in Khayelitsha. It's totally unique. And we'll continue to sell that story. And I'm glad that I'm not alone in this journey. I don't feel alone at all.
I think one of them, actually the most important, I spoke to a journalist this morning who's writing a story about about tourism in South Africa for the Telegraph. And the one thing she said is she's always been a lone journalist. And it's only through COVID that the word collaboration actually started to mean something. And I think that's such an important way forward of how do people collaborate. And also that idea of not everything's going to get an official answer, but it doesn't stop agency. It doesn't stop Lebo from greening his park. It doesn't stop Raymond from finding birds on bikes. It doesn't stop Nomsa from walking. And it doesn't stop you from that passionate embrace of what's around you. So on that note, I just want to thank everybody. Fantastic panel. I really enjoyed the interaction. I wish we could do more, but we did say we'd finish at 4:15. And I know people have often got somewhere important to go straight afterwards. So thank you all. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to all the questions for the panelists, but if anyone would like to just email us at johannesburg@inyourpocket.com if you want to continue the conversation, I'm happy to put the questions back out there so that we can give you answers. And yes, just to thank everybody for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed it.